get started. Water, very healthy. Thank you. If you are not currently going to be talking, if you could put yourself on mute, that would be helpful just to minimize the noise coming from your backgrounds. And then I'm going to hand it over to Danielle Sousa on our team, who's going to go over housekeeping for today's event.
Thank you, Renee. I'm going to advance the next slide. And so good morning, everyone. As Renee said, my name is Danielle Sousa and I'm a project associate with Valley Vision. So let me tell you, we are really excited to see everyone this morning. And our advisory can begin as soon as we get through some very quick housekeeping. So first, please enable your video cameras if you are comfortable and able. This is optional. Second, we do request that you please stay on mute unless you were called on to ask a question. And we also kindly ask for all participants to share their questions and commentary in the chat box so that we can stay on time with our schedule. And finally, this meeting is currently being recorded and it will be included in the post-meeting materials, which we'll send out after the advisory. And that was some very quick housekeeping, but please don't hesitate to let me know if you have any additional questions or concerns. You can definitely send me a quick direct message in the chat. And thank you once again for logging on this morning for our electric vehicle advisory.
Thank you, Danielle. And I'm Renee John. I'm a project leader here with Valley Vision. We have a few individuals on our team that are orchestrating this event. You met Danielle Sousa already. She's a project associate on the workforce team. We also have Angelina on our workforce team, project associate, and we have Caitlin, who is a project manager in workforce, and she'll be presenting some of the policy drivers later in this event. So I want to thank them for their efforts to host this event. And this event is made possible through strong workforce funds provided through Los Rios Community College District. The point of this advisory series is we are looking at the current landscape of training assets in the zero emission vehicle ecosystem. So not just related to mobility, but also related to manufacturing and logistics, and want to learn what we have that's already happening in our region, and also look at some front runner programs that are kind of paving the way for the future. And then we will have an employer advisory as a second in this series to hear from employers and industry specifically about what's currently happening and what they're expecting that's on the horizon. And that will help us inform what we're doing with training programs here in the region, specifically for the community colleges, as well as for all workforce stakeholders. I'm going to hand it over now to Kim Harrell, Jeff Briggs, and Orion Walker from the community college system. I'm not sure if all of them are on the call. I see Orion likes water, so I know he's here, and I know Jeff is here. Is Kim on the call? Okay, perhaps not. Then we're going to start with Orion. Do you have a welcome for us this morning?
Hi, folks. Sorry, I'm just audio this morning, but I'm happy to be here, and I'm very much looking forward to this content that you've been putting together for the day. I think we will learn a lot, and if I can be helpful in making connections with the regional colleges after this event to move efforts forward, I'm happy to do so. That's pretty much it for me.
Thank you, Orion. And Jeff.
Hi there. I am the Regional Director of Employer Engagement for the North Region Community Colleges, focusing on mainly the manufacturing sector. EV is sort of part of that because there's a lot of manufacturers supplying or developing EV components, especially in this region, and it's only going to get, it's only going to grow because of the efforts Sacramento State with the California Mobility Center coming into play. So yeah, so I'm here as a resource to anyone who is trying to make connections with our community colleges in the area and some of the programs that we offer, or any people from the colleges trying to reach out to employers and get those relationships up and running and make connections. So if I can help anybody, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Jeff. And again, I went over how this event is made possible and where the funding comes from, but we're going to share a slide of supporters with you now. So in addition to Los Rios Community College District, we also are partnering with Yuba College, Sierra College, Lake Tahoe Community College, Sacramento County Office of Education, and then these advisories are co-invested in by the workforce boards that cover the 9-county region, including North Central Counties Consortium, the Sacramento Employment and Training Agency, or Sacramento Works, Golden Sierra, and Yolo County, or Yolo Works. Then let me show the agenda of what we're going to be covering today, which you all should have received in your email. After these brief welcome and introductions, we're going to have Chris White talk to us about trends and opportunities. Then we're going to hear about policy implications that are driving this ecosystem of jobs forward. We will hear from Erin Wiltshire from the Center of Excellence on Training, Assets, and Occupational Information. We'll be hearing from Professor John Frala on Rio Hondo College Alternative Fuels Program, which is really a front runner in the nation. And then we'll have a community-based programs discussion to understand what's happening by our nonprofit and community and our education partners in K through 12 and beyond, how we can partner best together. And when we wrap up, we'll remind you about our second advisory in this series on September 17th, where there will be an employer and industry advisory panel that will really help round out this discussion and help us decide what the next steps will be. Thanks, Danielle. And so it's my pleasure to introduce to you Chris White. Chris White has been with Frontier Energy since 2004. She directs engagement and outreach activities. She develops electric vehicle or vehicle electrification strategies and roadmaps, creates fleet transition plans, and plans and implements pilot programs. Her clients include air districts, state and local governments, associations, automakers, and utilities. Since joining Frontier, Chris has been the communications director for the California Fuel Cell Partnership and was instrumental in developing the early commercial market for fuel cell vehicles and hydrogen stations. So she has a lot of information and she's going to be talking to us about trends and opportunities, and I will hand it over to you, Chris.
Thanks so much. And the first thing I have to say is I had no idea how bad that picture was. But you know, one of the things that happened at COVID is I finally let my hair color grow out and I realized that my good headshot no longer looks like me. So man, guess who's going to go find a photographer today and fix that? But, you know, thanks for having me here today. And there are many friendly faces that I see on the phone or names that I know, and I've worked with you all for many years as we've looked at the way to do this. And I have no slides. So I want to back up a little bit and tell you that before I started this job, and I've been here for 16 and a half years now, I started by working in technology. I worked for IBM and before that in computers, and I worked with computers before people actually had home computers. So it's been a really long time. And back when I was working initially with computers, I found a book at the library that talked about careers in computers. And it said two things, that there will always be a need for programmers and women should learn word processing. And if you think now about how our jobs have evolved, who among us does not use a computer or have learned things about computers to do our everyday job? We had no idea that 35 years ago that this was going to be the way that we do work. And so I start with that story because we have to think about how jobs will evolve with electric vehicles and charging stations and hydrogen stations and even production of other alternative fuels as we move forward, because while we have a lot of focus on build cars, install charging stations, repair hydrogen stations, those are not the only jobs that we have now or will have in the future. Some early research projects that I did, and early means like 4 years ago, because this market is so new, we looked at the nearest term job, and it was not repair technicians. In fact, the nearest term jobs were people who are customer service agents. That's the person that you call when you're trying to get insurance for your new car, or help you get a building permit to put something in your office, or to go and do an inspection at a site, or even order a part. In the world of alternative fuels, we have this secret language and we talk about things that don't make sense to other folks. So what can we do now in our high schools and college to start introducing that lexicon into their languages? You know, if we talk about the word battery, for people who do not know anything about electric cars or feel very little, they think we're talking about a AAA battery. When we talk to an insurance claims adjuster about a wrecked Tesla, it takes significantly longer to do an insurance adjustment on a Tesla than on other vehicles because the way the vehicle is made in layers. When you're calling somewhere to talk to your utility company about rates and about how to figure out something on your bill, does that person already know that language? So the more that we prep our workers now, the more they can walk into these customer-facing jobs, knowing the lexicon and knowing how to talk to customers and put their mind at ease. Now, this is really important for the folks who are speaking English. This is like quadruply important for the folks who don't speak English. And one of the things that we looked at in some early studies, in fact, in the Bay Area, is how we work with some of our partners that are working specifically with the Asian American community, that are working with the Spanish speaking community to get these words involved in their training as they're learning English and as they're learning to interpret English for others. So there's part one of what I have to say, is that it is these customer facing jobs. Part two is looking at the folks that we are expecting to work on our vehicles. My middle son is a mechanic. He got into being a mechanic because he's always loved cars. And when he works with cars, he uses all of his senses. He smells things, he looks at things, he touches them, he listens for noises. That's how you diagnose and repair a vehicle. And the folks that are largely in automotive today are there because they like to work with their hands. Well, working with an electric vehicle is working with data. You're hooking up a computer, you're running diagnostics, you're looking for secret patterns in the data. And yet we are not pushing our kids in high school who are computer and robotics people. We're not showing them there's the pathway in automotive. The pathway that they see, and I have to say, I have an 18-year-old grandson who just graduated from Lake Tahoe High School and is going to go to Tahoe Community College. I saw you were on the phone. He thinks his pathway is game design, even though his dad is an auto mechanic. He doesn't see that pathway for him. So what are we doing with our high school students or community college students who are in computer classes to understand that? Data forensics is huge with repairing electric vehicles. And in fact, if you watch the Proterra training videos, they have their mechanics sitting in classrooms working on laptop computers, trying to find out rhythms in the data, trying to figure out why something happens from data, not what they smell, touch, or feel. This is also true with our robotics students. We have lots of kids who are right now studying robotics in high school without really a clear pathway to go. There's where we see a really clear pathway for them to go into manufacturing. I want to point out a company that's local here to West Sacramento, Applied Spectra. Applied Spectra uses lasers to help build electrodes for batteries and fuel cells. They do this all by operating robotic equipment to build their lasers, and then those lasers do the work. So they're looking for people who have robotics experience. And I would say robotics extends into manufacturing. If you've toured some of our local businesses, the rice growers, NorCal Beverage, many of our food processors, they are doing lots of robotics work to move heavy boxes around or to jiggle things around, and have very few people who know how to work on those robots to fix them. Because we think of robots not as that big power arm that moves things from here to there. We're going to see more of that with vehicle manufacturing come along too, and particularly as we look at how we're mass producing batteries and fuel cells. So those are the areas that I want to really point out in looking and educating our students. And I want to wrap up by saying one thing that maybe applies to colleges. We also have lots of smart folks that are graduated from college with advanced degrees in engineering and in environmental studies and sustainability, and we need all of them too. As we've worked with UC Berkeley and Stanford and some other colleges with folks in their master's program, the gap that they found is they don't know how to talk to their coworkers. When they get out of that program, they have been single focused on their area of study, and they have never needed to explain what they do, how they do, and why they do it to other people. I encourage them to think about their job and how they might tell it to their mother or their grandmother. But one of the great programs we saw at Stanford is that they teamed up the engineering folks with the people who are getting master's degrees in marketing and communications and had them work together to explain the projects. And it was an immensely successful program because then we had communicators who learned how to speak science, and we had scientists who learned how to speak human. So I encourage those multi-dimensional collaborations as well, so that we can educate a bunch of people who realize that no one works as an island. We all work as a team, and communication is the most important thing that we can do to be successful. So with that, I'm at the end of my 10 minutes. I thank you for your attention. And so I tell other folks, I'm going to drop my email and my phone number into the chat. Y'all are welcome to call me, chat, tell me a funny joke, share your day with me. And we can also, I drink coffee too. I actually had to go on off video so I could go fill up my coffee. So we can be for coffee.
Thank you so much, Chris. And I'm going to go ahead and move forward now. My name is Caitlin Blockus. I'm a project manager at Valley Vision. I'll be sharing some of the policy implications. And my apologies if you hear any background noise. I unfortunately have a German Shepherd who is not as passionate about electric vehicles as I am. So if you hear anything weird in the background, my apologies there. So I want to move forward to the next slide here and discuss some of the policy drivers around electric vehicles and learn about, what drives policy around electric vehicles. So some of these drivers include federal, state, and local governments, as well as air quality districts. And then moving forward, what affects legislation and regulation regarding EVs and EV infrastructure? This can include mitigation of climate change, evolving codes and standards, as well as local ordinances. And we'll move ahead to the next slide here and look at some of the federal policies which impact electric vehicles. So most notable of which just passed was the bipartisan infrastructure deal, which passed on July 28th, which features the first national investment into EV charging infrastructure within the US on that federal level. The bipartisan infrastructure deal will dedicate $7.5 billion to installing EV charging stations. It will deploy EV chargers along highway corridors to aid long distance travel, create convenient charging where people live, work, and shop, and focus on rural, disadvantaged, and hard to reach communities. In a White House press briefing covering the infrastructure deal, they also said, quote, that it was a critical element in the Biden-Harris administration's plan to accelerate the adoption of EVs to address the climate crisis and support domestic manufacturing jobs. So just to give you some background there, and we'll move forward to the next slide to continue on federal policies. Another thing to keep in mind when looking at federal policies, in addition to the infrastructure bill, is FERC and some of the FERC orders which affect EVs. So just to give you a little bit of background on FERC, FERC is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which plays a key role in the future of electric vehicles. Just a little background on FERC, the commissioners are appointed by the president. Their job essentially is to provide regulation and guidance for the energy system and the ways that that energy is transmitted, which provides reliability and resiliency within the energy field. And so taking that into account, FERC Order 2222 allows distributed energy resources, or DERs, a lot of acronyms here, to participate in and support energy transmission systems. So just to define DERs there, DERs includes battery storage, renewable energy, solar energy, as well as our focus today on electric vehicles. So FERC Order 2222 would support the electric grid of the future and promote some competition within electric markets. It would also remove barriers preventing some of those distributed energy resources, DERs, from competing in a level playing field. And there's multiple benefits to that, which include lower costs for consumers through enhanced competition, more grid flexibility and resilience, as well as more innovation within the electric power industry. Essentially, though this is a federal order, this would allow California to store more energy and make electric vehicle adoption more widespread and more available. And I'll move ahead in our next slide and talk a little bit about state policies. So it's interesting looking at the electric vehicle system because there's lots of policies around energy which are directly tied into EVs. So it's important to kind of cover the background on some of these. So in addition to those federal policies, some of these state policies advance energy storage and the future of electric vehicles within California. And that includes Senate Bill 100 de Leon, which updates the state's renewables portfolio standard to ensure that by 2030, at least 60% of California's electricity is renewable. And just for your information, this past spring, we were at about 40%, so we're well on our way to achieving that goal. Additionally, SB 100 sets a goal of powering all state agency electricity needs, as well as retail electricity sold in California with renewable carbon resources by 2045. So moving on to another Senate Bill 49, Skinner requires energy efficient standards to maintain energy loads and help maintain our electrical grid reliability, which of course is directly tied to electric vehicles. It impacts their charging, and it leads to a much higher efficacy in transportation and power. And we'll move ahead just to some more state policies on our next slide here, talking a little bit about executive orders. One of the first regarding EVs in our state was by Governor Brown Executive Order B 4818, which set a target of putting 5 million zero emission vehicles on the road by 2030. Zero emission vehicles are also referred to as ZEV. You might hear that throughout this presentation here. And so that was one of the first executive orders regarding zero emission vehicles. And then followed up, this inspired Assembly Bill 2127 Ting, which required the California Energy Commission to assess the electrical vehicle charging infrastructure needed to meet the state's goals of 5 million ZEVs by 2030. We have 5 million cars. How are we going to power them? How is this going to work? And it found that California will need about 1.5 million charger for these zero emission vehicles, hence sort of why we're here today. And then moving on to our last slide here, one of, an additional executive order, which I think is really exciting for the ZEV industry, is Executive Order N7920 by Governor Newsom, which called for by 2035, all new cars and light duty trucks must be zero emission vehicles. The order also requires state agencies in partnership with the private sector to accelerate the deployment of affordable fueling and charging options. And it requires the support of new and used zero emission vehicle markets to provide broad accessibility. Again, this order will not prevent Californians from owning gasoline powered cars or selling them on the used market, just no new gasoline powered cars here in California. But just to provide you, there's a dense background on some of the electric vehicle policies, but a little bit of background for you there. And I will go ahead and pass it over to Erin Wilcher, who will cover some of the training assets and occupational information in the zero emission vehicle industry. I'll pass it over to Erin. Thank you.
Thanks, Caitlin. It's great information. And so I'm gonna say next slide, I guess, when I'm ready to go. I think the deck is loaded in. The organization that I work for, the Centers of Excellence, is a program under the Economic and Workforce Development Division for the California Community College's Chancellor's Office. And we provide technical assistance, especially research around labor markets, for the community colleges, but also community partners at a regional and a local level specifically, and looking at local economies and trying to forecast jobs and the outlook for students and programs in a way that will help career technical education and workforce investments. So I focus on the Greater Sacramento region. And next slide, please. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about occupational data. We're going to look at some kind of labor market-y type stuff in program information. So looking at related occupations, jobs postings, some market and infrastructure data, and then some information about career education programs. Primarily, I'm going to be focused on items related to alternative fuel vehicle technicians. I think as a couple of our speakers so far have indicated, the impacts here potentially could be broad. I do want to point out maybe just kind of one off the cuff remark. I've been working on sort of green jobs workforce stuff since the Obama administration, that famous era of ARA, green jobs and Van Jones and all that stuff. It's important to remember, I think, one kind of maxim thing when we're talking about green jobs and clean energy. I think, it's sort of crude to say, in a way, arguable certainly. Most of our jobs will probably look like they did before with a little bit of enhancement. So, I often think that first time around during the stimulus package around, 09, 10, like that, we thought all these sort of strange humans were going to show up who did jobs that we didn't ever know what they were before. And it turned out that wasn't the case. And so a lot of the jobs that will be created by some of these policies that Caitlin is talking about will largely be probably called the same thing with a little bit of special secret sauce, so to speak. That's a pretty crude comment, but I think it's generally kind of true. A lot of the jobs we're going to see out of these policies are in traditional industries, especially construction, manufacturing, transportation, certainly. So this is a timely and important conversation. As I'm going through these slides, there's a couple of key questions that I think I'm considering certainly as a research person, but also invite kind of consideration for our panelists and other discussants. So on this note of kind of special secret sauce, what special skills does alternative fuel vehicle technology require for technicians? What makes a AFV technician different than a regular tech? And then, some of the data we'll look at today really addresses this question. Is there increasing demand for technicians specific for alternative fuel vehicles, electric vehicles, or general techs that might need some specialized skills? Next slide, please. So my organization, the COE, has been looking at alternative fuel vehicles and especially around the technician piece. I guess going on 10 years now, we've done, some significant projects. The attention's not been consistent necessarily, but we have done some important studies. Notably, I think it was around 2014, we partnered with the Energy Commission and did some survey work across the state. And, that's kind of old, but nonetheless, when you do those kinds of efforts in workforce research, I think they're important touchstones. And I did a study, the screen capture you're looking at here is a 2018 study we did with Los Rios Community College District, looking at broadly the transportation sector and kind of mobility related issues, drones, autonomous vehicles, so forth. I think that study is on our website, but I'd be happy to email it to you. It's extensive and really has a lot more information than what I'm going to show today. But the information that I'm presenting today is kind of updated from that 2018 study. And just a couple of quick points here as we're going along to keep in mind. We're looking at this occupational data. The 2014 COE study with the Energy Commission found that 3/4 of fleet vehicle technicians work on alternative fuel vehicles. So the penetration there in terms of, labor market with respect to those, that technology is significant. We can think there that's including a lot of, transit agencies and other kind of medium and heavy duty type vehicles. And then half of auto repair and dealership technicians repair alternative fuel vehicles. And again, this doesn't necessarily answer the question I asked at the outset, like, well, how does a regular auto tech or a regular diesel tech different than an alternative fuel vehicle tech? But it just tells us that at least, as of 7-8 years ago when we conducted that study, the penetration seemed significant. Next slide, please. So we're going to just look quickly at some occupational data, and this is like labor market basics, right? So it's not, wholly answering the questions that we're asking, but it's giving us some perspective in terms of the size and performance of the labor market. And again, here we're focused on alternative fuel vehicle technicians by and large. These 4 occupations were the ones that, 8 years ago, and then I used again in 2018, that we determined were the most specific to alternative fuel vehicles. And it's not, perfect analysis, but we use the government data sets, and it just gives us a sense of kind of what we're looking at if you, try to identify core labor market here. So this is the Greater Sacramento Region. So it's a 7-county region that we're looking at. This data comes from EMSI, software vendor that we use. And basically, what is this telling us? It's telling us that in 2020, the most recent year for which we have data, that there's about 12,000 jobs in the Sacramento region and about 1,200 annual openings projected over the next 5 years. It's interesting, if you look at the automotive tech line, there's like a negative growth there in the last 5 years. So, what's the demand prospect? If we're talking about there's been 3 times the number of electric vehicle charging stations in the last 3 years, we'll see a slide on that in a second. How's that actually impacting demand? Well, it doesn't look like it's impacting it at all. And then the third line there, bus and truck mechanics, there's some increase there in the last 5 years. So just, looking historically, projections are projections. I often like to look at the recent and distant history to kind of give us some more context. So next slide, please. I'll just sort of quickly touch here without pausing too long. This is just sort of an illustration of the demand prospects, the projected annual openings for these occupations over the next 5 years, the 1,200 annual openings I mentioned, and this is expressed in terms of both new jobs as well as replacement jobs, so like retirements and people moving around. You can see most of the demand is for automotive service techs from those 4 occupations. Next slide, please. We do this kind of thing. This is kind of the high road marker. That is to say, what in terms of job quality, what is the wage outlook for these type of occupations. There's a lot of stuff sort of bucketed into these occupations. This is a government survey called the Occupational Employment Survey. And so lots of things contained here. And there's a lot of estimates that go on. It's a sample, a 3-year panel. Anyway, we compare this to a self-sufficiency wage, which is a 1 adult, 1 child household. So that's that kind of dotted red line thing. And you can see the management, supervisorial occupations, no surprise, pay a little more. And the technician level jobs pay a little less. The 3 bars for each occupation is just technical stuff in terms of the percentile distribution of the wages. We mostly look at, or I mostly look at the median earnings to give us a sense of what's kind of normal. So you can see, like, for the techs, it's like $23 to $27 an hour. That's again in Greater Sacramento region. Next slide, please. So this is something kind of interesting and that we do just as a matter of course. This is what a colleague calls the desk work. Panels like this are super important because we get to sort of, take the desk work kind of crazy questions and ground truth them a little bit. This data from jobs postings, a tool called Burning Glass, contradicts what I said at the outset from our 2014 survey data. When we looked at auto tech jobs postings in the last year in the Greater Sacramento region, we input a bunch of keywords related to alternative fuel vehicles. And this is what we found, that this really small minority, like just 7% of the postings, have any mention of keywords related to alternative fuel vehicles. So whereas the survey that we did in 2014 statewide indicated like half of auto techs are working on alternative fuel vehicles, this analysis indicates that by and large, the employer job postings aren't indicating that they're looking for techs with any kind of specific application to alternative fuel vehicles. This isn't definitive, it's just another data point, but it's kind of interesting and surprising. Next slide, please. Same thing happens when you look at the medium and heavy duty vehicles. So in this case, we're looking at fleet and diesel techs, truck mechanics, stuff like that. Turns out that in our research, we found the jobs postings most frequently mentioned for alternative fuel vehicles were for compressed natural gas and liquefied natural gas. So that's the search that we did. But basically, bottom line here is same picture on the medium and heavy duty vehicles. A minority of jobs postings are mentioning anything related to alternative fuel vehicles in the Greater Sacramento region last year. Next slide, please. So our 2018 study kind of went gangbusters on this really cool data from the Department of Energy, the Alternative Fuels Data Center. It's super accessible and easy to manipulate and gives you some interesting stuff. So just to show you a couple examples we updated for this presentation. Kind of interesting here, you can see here for the California slice, obviously, for the most recent data, we can uncover that of the fuel sources for alternative fuel stations in California, electric vehicle charging stations clearly dominate. We did this exact same analysis in 2018. Most of the categories hardly changed. Compressed natural gas, for example, I think was only like by 20 different. It might have been 340 or 316, I can't remember. Propane stations and biodiesel shrank by half in the 3-year interval between when we did this analysis. But the headline here for this slide is that, in the 3-year period since we conducted the analysis, the electric vehicle charging stations nearly tripled. So the number in March 2018 was 4,823. And then when we just did it, you can see what the number is there, almost 14,000. Next slide, please. This is kind of pulling out nationally, looking at specifically electric vehicle charging stations. This data source showed the major vendors. This is probably about like 95% of all the charging stations. I think there's probably some other vendors and a few thousand more that aren't accounted for here, but this is like what I imagine is probably the vast majority of charging stations. The number, at least according to this data set, is 38,700 charging stations nationally. And then importantly, this is calling out what the market share is in California, the percentage of the charging stations by vendor that are located in California. So California is clearly a leader. We counted total in this analysis like almost 39,000 EV charging stations, and 32% of those are in California, like 12,400. So California is definitely a market leader. Just have a couple more slides here. Next slide, please, on programs. And just wanted to point out that we conducted this exercise with the California Mobility Center last year, where we were sort of imagining should their research and development, manufacturing, incubator, economic development projects scale, like what jobs potentially would be included in terms of impacts from market transformation, economic development, and then looking at what corresponding programs do we have at our community colleges in the Greater Sacramento region that are potentially supporting those jobs that would be created. They provided us a list of jobs based on a model mobility center that they're kind of modeled off of. And then we use those descriptions to look at potential program areas and what we had in our asset inventory. So you can see the list of jobs. This is a condensed list, and then kind of a summarized list of programs in the Sacramento area that are related. Next slide, please. So this is just the last slide. You could see here, based on that list of supposed, not supposed, I mean, these are existing program areas at the community colleges in the Greater Sacramento region that would support those jobs that we, were the list that we were provided. You can see here just the kind of bottom line, 1,200 total awards on average annually over the last 3 years, the most recent 3 years for which we have data in these various areas of, computer networking, programming, industrial electronics, computer support, auto tech, welding, so forth. So, really underscoring that I think we have a lot to offer in terms of training and education existing. And to a certain extent, I think we're kind of doing what we're doing today, trying to see what the future might hold for development projects, new technologies, market transformation, etc. So with that, I will just do one last thing on my last slide, which is offer again to email you the 2018 study. Should you want to take a look at that, just send me an email. And then the last thing is just a shameless plug for our economic update. We release quarterly, showing a kind of a state of the workforce, in the Greater Sacramento region in Northern California, especially in the context of the pandemic. So you can subscribe at that link if you want to take a look at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Hey, there's a question in the chat about what is the region when you say the Greater Sacramento region. Can you explain that?
Yeah, for most of the data that I showed, it's 7 counties. So Sacramento, I hope I can get them all right. Sacramento, Yolo, Yuba, Sutter, Nevada, El Dorado, Placer. I don't know if I'm forgetting one. Anyway. Okay. It's like the MSA plus Nevada, Yolo, and Yuba. I think that's right.
Okay, thank you. And then Martin, I know you had a pretty detailed question that you had put in the chat. If you want to unmute yourself and ask it, I'm not sure if Aaron will have the specific answers to it, but there might be, I don't know if Jeff Briggs or someone else on the call might have.
Yeah, I'm just curious because when you talk about, starting to put up chargers across the state, a level 2 charger, which is a 220 volt versus a DC fast charger, kind of significant levels of labor required and cost to install, which would drive, how many electricians would be needed to do this. do you have any idea when they're talking about chargers, if they're talking about putting in, the DC fast chargers, or is it more kind of a mix of level 2 and DC fast chargers?
How did I know I was going to get a question on this? In other words, Mark, are you asking in the Department of Energy data that I showed, like what is a count of one?
I'm sorry I'm just curious as if the mix is basically when they say they're going to put in X number of chargers, if those are all probably going to be DC fast chargers.
And Chris has her hand raised, so she might be able to contribute to that as well, or Professor Frala. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, Mark, I can probably answer some of that when I do my presentation.
Okay, great. Thanks.
All right. Chris, did you have something you want to contribute before?
I do. So I just want to mention too that it's not just the electricians, but any charging station that's installed with state funding from any state grant program, which could also include utility programs, starting in January, will have to be installed by a C10 electrician that has also completed EVITP certification. And there is only one place right now that is offering EVITP certification, and it is a once-a-month online class that takes a maximum of 12 students. So this is both an opportunity, but also going to be just an enormous bottleneck. And I know John will talk about this, but where do we see what we're talking about with charging stations? It's at people's homes. So while there's you all hear so much, or we all hear so much about DC fast charging and public charging, it is still in people's houses. And that's what we really need to be looking at, because many of these houses are too old to support a charging station.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate that. So I'm going to go ahead and introduce Professor Frala, and he has a lot of accolades. I'm going to do a brief introduction, but feel free to add to that if I miss significant portions. So Professor John Frala holds master's degrees in adult education and distance learning, bachelor's of science degree in business administration. His experience in alternative fuels comes from over 50 years in the transportation industry, and he is nationally renowned for his work. Professor Frala and the Alternative Fuels Technology Program at Rio Hondo College have won many awards and received recognition from many different entities, including the State of California Community College Association. And Professor Frala, I'll let you take it from here.
I have about 5 slides, if I could show the screen.
Yes, let me make you a co-host. You're good.
Okay. Now, if I can find them. Give me a
Is
second.
it all too many tabs open?
Yeah.
Okay.
There it goes. Okay, everybody can see that?
Not yet. I'm not seeing
okay.
it.
All right. Hold on. Yeah, this is always the fun part of it.
You can also have you email it to one of us to share if that's easier.
There it goes. Okay. That should be up now.
It is.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. So a little bit of history of it. My program has been around for 28 years. 25 years of it, we've been focusing on electrics and EVs. Started out with CNG, LNG, propane, biofuel. We make biofuel out of tris-chewy algae that we grow, which is kind of died off now. There's not a lot of interest in the biofuel anymore. So we've concentrated the last 5 years, 6 years now on the hydrogen fuel cell highway. So from there, we've created our second degree. So I have 2 degrees, one in alternative fuels, gaseous fuels, second degree in electric and fuel cell vehicles. Our third degree right now is the Tesla Start Technician. So we're one of 2 training centers in California. We're the second in the nation to do the Tesla Start Technician. And currently we graduate more technicians than any other of the 5 put together. Roughly right now, we're somewhere around 200 to 300 technicians in 5 years. So our experience with this highway, as everyone's calling it, has just grown over and over the last few years. We recently were involved with the Volvo Class 8 VNR electric semi project, which was granted a continuation. We have another year because we're proving this now with Snyder Trucking, NFI Trucking, and one of the beer providers is now purchasing electric Class 6 and Class 8 trucks. We're also involved in the Amazon electric vehicle project for their Amazon delivery vans. And then the last one that we just got was Rivian, which started last month. So our program has got about 5 of the major manufacturers in electric and hydrogen coming out of our program itself. Annually, classroom and lab, as you'll see, I have about $2 million of Tesla vehicles that we have on campus that are all licensed and drivable. Students are hands-on. This is not online type of stuff. I'm still, even with COVID, allowed to run 12 students per session, which has now been increased to 24 this week. So we have been hands-on even through COVID, moving on to provide this technology. One of the real eye-openers for me is the interest. I put in the chat, as of this morning, there's 44,748 level 2 and level 2A chargers, which I'll kind of answer some of Mark's questions. We are moving to 5 different types of charging now. We're now going into CCS charging, and that'll be done at a 40 amp circuit, and we'll go up to 125 amps on the CCS2 circuit. Most of the trucking industry, medium duty, and some of the automobile manufacturers are using the CCS system because it allows them to go to 125 amps of DC fast charge and not have a lot of cost in equipment. On the Tesla 250 system, we actually have to run a cooling system through the charging handle, or the consumer would burn their hand because the current is so high on those chargers. So as we're looking at a charging infrastructure, as Chris was saying, there's a lot of things that go into it now. We're not just plugging into the 110 wall, sticking it in the car and walking away for 6 to 8 hours, and in some instances, 12 hours. These cars and the consumers are expecting a 300-mile range in 12 to 18 minutes. Our infrastructure with a heavy-duty truck and medium-duty truck in the last 2 years with our project with Volvo and Mercedes, these trucks are looking to do spot charging as they're unloading their stuff. So we've seen with Proterra that was mentioned earlier, they have a ABB system that will allow that bus to do a full charge or 80% charge while the driver takes their 21-minute break. So this is a whole nother group of technicians, which we've been approached by California Energy Commission and a couple other of the entities that are out there. One of them yesterday, I just got off a meeting. I didn't even have time to put it into this power slide, is AQMD. Their South Coast Air Quality Management District, Mr. Cotty, which is a board member, is now looking at putting together a technician group of repair technicians just for charging systems. So these will be guys that will be licensed and certified, not to install, but to do the maintenance and the point of service on these machines. So we're currently looking at how big of a group, how big is the need, and with the number of stations that are out there, we've already contacted a lot of like ChargePoint and Clipper Creek, trying to find out how viable that would be for technicians. So the pictures I've got here posted, the one in the upper side left is the first graduating group of Volvo semi technicians. And you'll notice the girl in the middle. A whole nother story for females. I hate to say it, guys, but the females think different than us. My female technicians are generally hired, I would say 5% higher in wages, and they are the first in the group to get hired. Females do not tear cars apart and then think they need to go do the research. Females will do the research before they even pick up a tool. And 99% of the time right now, we don't need tools for electric vehicles. We need a laptop. So I am in the process right now working with NSF, the National Science Foundation, to put together a women's EV academy just for females going into this field. The demand is huge out there. The girls are now realizing they don't have to get dirty. It's not a diesel oil I'm not going home smelling like a bus truck kind of thing. The girls are now demanding this type of a field. So as I start looking at some of the stuff that we were talking about earlier, some of the fields are changing in enrollment that we're seeing, and more going towards females that want to be in this industry because they are very tech savvy. So I think that our shift is going to be from the technicians into the females that will be the controllers, the programmers, and a lot of the remote technicians that are doing EV diagnostics and our autonomous stuff is going to switch over to this female type of employment. So some of the numbers we were talking about earlier on that 2018 survey are going to be very skewed if we were to do it today in 2021, 2022. So our program has been adapting to these changes as they go up. Because of this is a lot of words and I won't go through every word in here, but the N7920, as Caitlin was referring to earlier, this has changed our whole market in the next few years. Our programs we have zero interest in diesel. We've gotten rid of our diesel program. We no longer offer it. We've expanded our EV program now. I have 125, actually 144 students enrolled in a 2-year degree program right now for electric vehicles. They are getting hired before they complete their second year. We have started a paid internship now with Tesla, Rivian, Volvo, moving to Budweiser sales. LA Metro is now on board also looking at some of our paid stuff. My students will have 200 hours of paid experience before they graduate with that associate's degree. So in my view of this, I'm changing how these technicians are coming into the marketplace because of the needs. 2024, it's around a corner. 2035, 2030 on the heavy duty, medium duty stuff, it's knocking on our door already. We're already behind the 8 ball as far as technicians and training. Incumbents right now are 45% of my classes. So my students have moved from that 18 to 21-year-old group. I now have 28 to 35-year-old technicians coming in, starting a second career. And you're correct that we are losing about 12% of our workforce to retirement. When we switched from diesel to CNG, I saw the shift back in 2002, 2004, where we'll call them the gearheads or knockheads, they usually called. They looked at that and said, I got to use a laptop to work on the CNG. I'm out of here. I'm a diesel guy. I'm a 2-stroke diesel guy. So we lost 22% of our workforce just in 2005 because of that change to natural gas. Now with the inevitable change that we have now, the home house and the car and the dealer all have to coordinate how their training is being provided. My house has been off grid going on 10 years. I have 38 325 Tesla solar system panels. I have 2 Powerwall backup units on my house. I can charge my car and go 300 miles virtually on the sun. And this is what's happening in the houses now. I have a microgrid system that I can sell, and I do sell a lot of my energy back to Edison in my area. I provide more than enough energy for my household, even on the 240 side. So I have a level 2 240 system here that charges my Tesla in approximately 22 minutes. This is like Chris is saying, this is where the technicians that we see are going. So we need to concentrate more on just what this guy is doing in the field here, or if he's going to go work at a service shop, we need that guy that can do the mobile servicing to get out to the houses to look at this stuff. We're already seeing this with Toyota. A customer comes in and says, I can only charge 30% of the charge that I need on my vehicle at home, but when I go to a public station, I get an 80% charge. Why? Well, because the house is older, somebody put in a sub panel in it that's on a new, doesn't have a neutral. So my charger's not recognizing the neutral in the wiring, and it's only going to charge to its value. So yes, we are seeing that part of the industry change very quickly. And with these new regulations, it's coming very quickly. So as trainings and colleges and things like this, as we're putting these programs together, nationally, I'm on several boards. I'm on the SAE 2990 board. I'm on the SAE 2601 board. I'm also now on SAE high voltage safety, which we just got authorized by SAE after 5 years of work. We now have a high voltage certification when we're doing the train the trainer this October. And that'll be a nationally certified and recognized certification for high voltage people in the colleges, moving this training into it. We've had very few incidences, but this is the scary part. Prius at 225 volts go all the way up to a semi that's 680 volts to 1,000 volts of storage. This is why we're seeing EV techs not being classified as repair in the service centers, is because only certain guys have the levels and certification to be working as an EV full-blown tech. So the numbers are kind of skewed. Yeah, an EV standard tech can come in and change some odds and ends on a high voltage car, but they're not allowed to touch the battery pack without that manufacturer certification right now. So this is what's driving our changes on the educational side for what we're doing here. Now, there's a ton of money out there that's coming out fairly quickly between AQMD, South Coast Plaza, or South Coast AQMD's has some money out there. CEC's got some money out there. I'm going after $580,000 for the Women's Academy right now for NSF. So this is what's going to drive what the colleges are doing. Unfortunately, I started with Arnold Schwarzenegger on this hydrogen highway. So I've been in this highway many, many years. We got 53 stations. It's nowhere near what we were projecting even a few years ago. This has just taken a long time to get there. It's not the answer. It's a piece of the puzzle. It's going to be a piece of puzzle only in certain regions. Because other than us, only New York and Ohio have charging stations right now that are publicly available on the hydrogen side. So this is costing the manufacturers a lot of money. And like they were saying earlier, a lot of the registration is being driven by what we're doing here in California. There's my contact information, and this is my faculty website that has a lot more information on our programs. I can't even begin to tell you guys how fast I'm seeing this stuff change right now. I'm now looking at fleets of semi trucks that go from the harbor to San Bernardino, Riverside with the stuff that's coming in off the boats at zero emissions, and it's expanding just as fast as we could get this training done. That's been our big issue here, is the infrastructure is not following. So yes, we have the trucks, we have the vehicles, but the infrastructure is taking way too long to get certified. And it's for really silly things like Edison wasn't aware that NFI or DHE had onboard charging and battery storage, so they did not commission their plant for almost 12 months. So there's a communication gap here. The stuff's in place, it's moving forward, but it's being delayed by just little things of not communicating between the techs and what they're doing. The last thing I want to talk about, my program is not supported by the state of California Chancellor's Office. My program in its entirety has been completely supported by me writing grants. Over the last 10 years, the $14 million it's taken to build this program has all been grant supported. And that's the other piece that, as Chris will tell you, these grants drive that technology. The grants are coming from the technology changes, but the community colleges are not being given this information or the chance to apply and get supported by this funding. So as our politicians are now seeing this, they're adding education into these grants as they're being written in Sacramento and in Washington, D.C. But the colleges need to have somebody that's out there looking for this stuff to support us. With this, we can make major changes on what's happening here. And I hope that answers some of the questions. And if there are questions, you guys can get a hold of me either at theRioHondo.edu or my faculty pages right there has the link also.
Thank you so much, Professor Frala. And I know there was a question in the chat a little bit as you were beginning. Jonathan Polidano, if I'm saying that right. Did you have a question that you wanted to pose?
Yeah, the comment came up when the installation of the charging stations came up about different certifications and licensing requirements for the electricians that are installing it. And I was just wondering if there had been any like discussions or talks about new certification or licensing requirements for the technicians that are going to be working on the EVs.
There is currently several projects. We are involved in two of the projects. One with the it's an IEEW, which is doing some certification stuff right now currently in California. Janice retired a couple of years ago, so they've got some new people. They actually had several people to take her place, and she was a huge driving force of the electricians union out here in California. They are doing certifications, especially classes for that hands-on. They're in Southern California. I don't know about anything in Northern California yet. The other part, which is the maintenance side, has been done here and there by some of the manufacturers of the equipment who install them. There is not a centralized network yet of technicians with mobile units that can go out and do the repairs on these things, like the point of sales, the low voltage stuff. That is in the process. There is some money coming out from the California Energy Commission in the next couple of months to put this together and make this program happen. So if any of the colleges have existing electrician programs and want to get involved in that, absolutely shoot me an email and I'll send you the information. You guys can get involved in this. On my program, we just last month started the Tesla Powerwall program. So we do solar installation, the glass shingles that are going on the roof, Tesla Powerwalls. That program is being taught on my campus. They've had 2 graduating classes already. These guys were snatched up so fast. It was just like head spinning for us. Couldn't get them through there quick enough. So yes, the demand's there. Again, it's slow and happening. Should have been done 10 years ago. But because of things that have happened, it is just happening now.
Thank you so much. And I'll just put a shout out to the second part of this advisory series on September 17th, which that link will be sent to all of you in case you're not registered. That is going to be an employer and industry advisory panel. We do have Matt Newtonboom from the IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, will be there to answer questions. We also have Lion Electric, Clipper Creek, Siemens, Coil Electric, and we're still working to try to get Rivian and Tesla confirmed for the event. So we will have a employer and industry panel on September 17th where additional questions can be directed. This has been a great presentation. Thank you, Professor Frala. Thank you for sharing your information. And also, when we originally met with you, it was very clear this was a passion project for you. And you know, you've been a leader in this field and kind of you paved the way for all of us to learn from. So I appreciate your efforts and all your grant writing to get to this point. So we have a model that we can look to. So thank you for your presentation today.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yep, appreciate that. So feel free to outreach to him, anyone who wants additional information. We're going to move now to our community panel discussion. And I think Danielle will share a PowerPoint slide here real quick so that we can just introduce the panel to you. So we have Kevin Dobson, founder and executive director with the Capital College and Career Academy with us. We also have Roshani Jackson, student coordinator with Green Tech Education and Employment. And we have Maury Elliott, who is the director of Sava Charter School. And this portion of the event is intended to understand what other kinds of training and pipeline and early pipeline programs are happening, either in the education system or in the neighborhoods that we might be able to partner with to ensure that the ecosystem of jobs for electric vehicle technicians, as well as charging station installation and logistics, that full spectrum of jobs is made available to everyone, and especially to those who have experienced the burden of pollution in their neighborhoods. So I'm pleased to welcome them to this panel discussion, and I'll have a few questions for each of them, but we can, I know Danielle, I just had you put this back on, but we can go back to being able to see each other's faces if that's okay for the panel discussion. So the first question that I'm going to ask, and I'll start with you, Kevin, is if you can tell us about your organization, your role, the programs you offer, and the primary populations you serve. And I know this is a little bit of a work in progress, so go ahead and vision cast for us.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, thank you for putting this together and having me today. As Renee shared, my name is Kevin Dobson. I'm the founder and executive director of Capital College and Career Academy. Currently the principal at Natomas Charter School, so I have both perspectives on this. Capital College and Career Academy, as Renee alluded to, is a new upcoming high school that is set to open its doors in the fall of 2022. We're a rigorous college-infused high school focused on hands-on learning, where students no longer have to choose between college or a career. And so this is accomplished through dual enrollment partnerships with both American River College and Sacramento State, and partnerships with a large number of industry throughout the region. Students participate in a career exploration during their freshman and sophomore year before they really marry to a company in their junior and senior year and work towards tangible certificates and employable skills to ensure that we are establishing a pathway as soon as high school concludes. We are setting out to locate in North Sacramento, an area that has historically been underinvested. And I guess I just also want to point out that with our model, we are working with a number of individuals on this call. So we're excited to share some more about the program here in the coming minutes.
Thank you so much. And Roshni, I'm going to give you the same question. If you could tell us about Green Tech education and training, your role, the programs you offer, and the primary populations you serve.
Hello, everybody. So my name is Roshni Jackson. I'm the student coordinator with Green Tech Education and Employment. And we are a community-based organization that teaches opportunity youth with, we educate them and give them exposure to emerging green collar skills, introducing them to careers in building and design and construction trades, science, entrepreneurship, engineering. And our program teaches them green skills, I'm repetitive. And really just giving them exposure into these different emerging green industries. Our demographic is young people 16 to 24, primarily in the Oak Park area, but we do get students from the north. This past summer, we've had quite a few students from Elk Grove. And some of the programs that we offer, so our TUFA program, which stands for Teaching Urban Farming, Forestry, and Aquaponics, that is our primary program, which does work with the 16 to 24-year-old youth. And we also, but with that program, we also give them exposure into what we would call like field trips to get hands-on, firsthand experience. So we've had trips to Tesla, so they got to see the buildings of the electric vehicle cars. They've had field trips to the RT station, SAC Tree Foundation, the Power Grid out in Folsom, and just other areas and things so they can, again, see that those opportunities and those careers are out there. A lot of times, many of them have never, seen or didn't know what these things existed or the careers that are available to them. And we also have a computer literacy program that runs consistently as well. And oftentimes, I guess, if you will, we have different running programs that pop up, if you will, when opportunities present themselves. For example, we've had an energy efficiency program, which was 6 weeks or so to prepare them for a job for a company that was actually looking for people. So we have those things that kind of pop in and out as well. So that's what we are.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And Maury Elliott, I'm going to give you the same question. Share about Sava Charter School, your role, the programs you offer, and the primary populations you serve.
All right, thank you, Renee. Again, my name is Maury Elliott. I'm currently the director of Sava Charter School and overseeing all of our CTE programs for our charter management organization called Gateway Community Charters. Sava started in 2007. And since that time, we've grown into actually 3 separate schools. So we have authorizations for charters within the Twin Rivers, Elk Grove, and Sac City Unified School Districts. Our primary goal is, re-engaging underserved youth in our community with CTE programs. If you walk onto our school campus, we offer currently 9 different career pathways, and we really use those pathways to get kids to buy back into education. And when it pertains to what we're talking about here today, we have an automotive technologies pathway and a construction pathway that relate directly to this conversation. Construction has been probably our biggest success over the last 5 years, and we're starting to dabble in that automotive technologies piece, specifically working with SMUD on an EV class this semester. Our primary student population, the average student that shows up to our campus and enrolls is about a year behind on their credits towards graduation. They are reading at a level 3 years below their grade level, and they've just been underserved in the education realm over their elementary and secondary career. And we've got a lot of work to do to get them to believe in themselves, to buy into the future potential that they have as solid community members and employed people in our region. And it's a big task. We serve almost 30% of our students have learning disabilities. So again, we're really looking at a student population that they're brilliant, they have a lot of potential, but they need extra support. And we're a hybrid learning model where students are on campus anywhere from 2 to 4 days a week, half a day to a full day at a time. We're classified as an independent study school, but really 50% of our instruction is done independently, kind of in the distance learning model. And the other 50% are support classes and CTE classes in person on site with teachers, with mentors, with a support staff that's going to help them get to where they need to be by the time they graduate.
Thank you. Thanks so much for that introduction. The next question that I have, I'll start with Roshni on this one, is how could you or do you see your programs and educational offerings preparing students to join the zero emission vehicle ecosystem of jobs? How would that work with the programs that you're currently offering?
Yes, so one of the newest programs that you guys may or may not have heard of was actually our Green Tech Mobility Hub. And so actually Green Tech was donated 8 Toyota Mirais, which are hydrogen fuel cell vehicles. And they, with the intention to give students rides to and from our program who may not have access to transportation, as well as for the community members to be able to access, have access to a vehicle that they can run errands and go to job interviews and things with. And so I would say in regards to the zero emission vehicle ecosystem, as that mobility hub continues to unfold, that we have access to resources in there. So we currently have some students who are involved in helping to build the mobility hub. So some of our veteran students who are interested in construction, they've been able to be a part of that process. And as that continues to unfold, we anticipate drivers for those vehicles, technicians for those vehicles, the maintenance people for those vehicles, and for the site as a whole. And so again, that is as with our mobility hub. But in general, with our students as well, we are always looking to prepare them with workforce skills. So the resume and how to carry themselves, how to speak correctly. So even though it's not specific to the zero emission, the workforce in general, how to interview well and things of that nature. So as we continue those elements of our workforce development and just how to be more professional, with the mobility hub, as that evolves, we anticipate opportunities there as well.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And Maury, how about you? How do you see, you mentioned your automotive technician program coming online or is online. How do you see the program and educational offerings that Saba Charter Schools has preparing for students for the jobs, either in the automotive technician or infrastructure piece of this?
Yeah, the great thing, the reason I've been so heavily involved in charter schools over the years is we have a little more flexibility and freedom to create pathways for kids as we see the need in the community. Every pathway that we've created came from community need, community interest, and quite frankly, folks like you guys here in this panel today coming to us saying, this is a need, can you help us train the next generation of workers? So we do currently have those 2 pathways in place that tie directly to this. But again, like I said, our automotive technologies is really in its infancy. We wrote a grant last year and received a significant amount of dollars to start a manufacturing and welding pathway. We're still looking for an instructor to teach that pathway. We're looking for an additional instructor for our construction program. There's such a need for teachers right now. So I think what I want to say with this question is we have the foundation to start training our youth for this industry, but we as a charter school educational institution need help from folks like you. If you are interested in teaching in any capacity, I said our program's a hybrid model. When we teach a class in construction or in automotive technology, it's a once a week, 3-hour class. So we set it up almost collegiate style where you come to school 1 or 2 days a week for that specific pathway, which has enabled us over time to be able to bring in a lot of different part-time instructors from local community colleges where we articulate classes, bring them in to teach on site to our students. So I really want to make that pitch today that to help us continue to develop these programs, if you have any contacts that want to be a teacher in this field, even if it's just part-time, reach out. I'm sure Kevin probably going to be in the same boat, right? I mean, we can't run our programs without an educational staff, teachers on site. So we're ready to roll. We have the foundation to make it happen. We've done it on a deep level in other pathways. I just need partners to join with us so we can continue getting these kids to where they need to be.
Thank you so much for that. That keeps coming up, the need for teachers, both for.
Can I say, let me add one thing. Sorry to cut you off, Renee, but with that, sometimes people think in the industry it's really hard to become a teacher. Now, again, it does take a skill set to be able to teach high school students, but oftentimes that credential is the problem, right? We created a system where if you don't have a credential, but you want to come teach, we have CTE mentors that come to campus and under the supervision of one of our current credentialed teachers can deliver instruction in pathways, right? So we have ways to make it happen. Do not think you have to be a current credentialed teacher to come and start this program, start instruction with us. We've got ways to make it happen and then ways to help you get that credential if it's something you're interested in doing, even in a small part-time level.
Thank you. There's a question about, is there a link to this mentorship? So I'll leave that for you, Maury, if there's anything
I can definitely give you some info to that. And we have some open postings now. So I'll share that with the group before we're done today.
Thank you. Kevin, we'll give the question to you. I know you're still in development, but how could the programs and educational offerings that you're developing help prepare students for this ecosystem of jobs?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to echo a lot of what Maury said. I think first and foremost, the fact that we are charter schools gives you quite a bit more flexibility. I think Saba is much larger than us, with multiple sites, but still, I think we have the flexibility that Maury alluded to that allows us to be responsive to industry needs, which I've heard from industry partners is sometimes a challenge when working with K-12 or higher education entities. A couple more pieces, and I will answer the question, but I just wanted to also point out with us being located in North Sac, 30% of people in that community live below the poverty line. Median income is $34,000. 50 most populous neighborhoods, 49 and 50 are right in the 95815 zip code within a 5-mile radius of our school. And so certainly we are a high school 9 to 12, but we are really looking to step more towards a true community school model, providing ongoing youth programs for middle and elementary school students, trying to engage them at a younger age, identifying that, hey, this could actually be a career, this could be a pathway. And then also partnering with Sac State and other industry partners of how do we run some type of certificate programs on our school site. And so in terms of our actual high school offering, we have an initial focus on foundational skills, carpentry, electrical, and plumbing. Really construction fundamentals, OSHA certification, CPR certification, safety is a heavy emphasis. And then really it is up to the individual student to identify their interest and passion area. And with that, I would just say that our partners, SMUD, Valera, WICA, numerous others have been really essential to develop what this junior and senior year and these pathways could look like to ensure students are leaving our program with the skills needed to go directly into a career and to fill this pipeline. And we say the construction industry and the trades, but it is, I think we use that very loosely because it could be anything from fire sprinklers to marketing, sales, anything kind of within this umbrella, all the way up to construction management, architecture, engineering.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Our next question is going to be, what are the common barriers to participation or completion of training and job acquisition that you find for the community members you serve? And Maury, I'll start with you on this question.
All right, well, the barriers are significant. Just like Kevin said, in South Sacramento, similar numbers. And we have students that, I'll say the biggest barrier, transportation, right off the bat. Students trying to get to our campuses to attend class. Most of our students at our sites live within a 2-mile radius of our school. Because if you get out 3 or 4 miles from campus, that bus ride is going to take you 3 or 4 hours. And we literally have kids that will leave at 5 in the morning on the bus to get here by 9 o'clock for class. And that's just not sustainable for a lot of folks to do day in and day out, week after week, year after year. One way we've been able to really support through that challenge is through a number of CTE grants that were out there. We purchased our own small fleet of SUVs. So we have an SUV at every Saba campus. And if we offer construction in South Sac, but one of our Elk Grove kids wants to take that pathway, we drive him there every single day for class. So we do what we can. It's not perfect, but we do what we can to support in that. Other hindrances, other barriers. Right now, man, as kids start to come back to school, homelessness, doubling up. Students don't have a house over their head. Food's a big issue, and we've established a number of partnerships with places like River City Food Bank that drops off food weekly, and then we have our support specialists going into the community, dropping bags of food off at student houses. Anything we can do to make kids feel comfortable, to feel safe, to feel like they have adult mentors and support around them, increases the chance that they'll show up to class and participate in these pathways. But it's a challenge with the underserved neighborhoods that we work with.
Thank you. Roshani, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are the common barriers to participation or completion of training and job acquisition that you see for the community members you serve?
So I'm gonna be the third one on the train of transportation. That was actually our first our first point of contact as well. Being that we're in a park, though, a lot of our students kind of are coming from multiple directions. Well, a couple things. One, that we're an after-school service program, so we're not an actual school. And so because of that, students are coming from different schools, different locations in Sacramento. And so that has proved to be a challenge, which is why when the Toyota Mirage came and them being zero emissions, that was such a major thing. The downside to that, though, is, you know, the hydrogen fuel cell locations and infrastructure to be able to, you know, run these things. But that is definitely something that we were able to assist with, but it's still, you know, not a perfect system. But in addition to that, you know, one thing that you said in the asking of the question was in the completing of the training. And I would say a lot of that for some of them is, you know, income, wanting, you know, looking for work. And so they choose a part-time, you know, minimum wage job over continuing to stay for the skills for potential career, as well as family challenges, which naturally present personal development challenges and professional challenges to where they are just frankly not ready for work. You know, they don't follow through. They may get, part of our opportunity, part of our program is obviously preparing these young people for work and having community partners. So that way, when work opportunities present themselves, we can say, oh, great, we have this student over here and they'd be a great match, things of that nature. But for participation reasons, legal issues have proved themselves to be a challenge at times, but where some of our students just won't follow through, you know, they just fall off, you know, they have a full job and then they just stop going. And it's like, okay, so that is some of the personal and professional development, which again, family issues, legal issues, transportation kind of all play a factor.
Thank you. Kevin, I'm going to ask you the same question. I see some activity in the chat as well that you were going to speak to. So
I think many of these are kind of cross-cutting themes here. I think in our community, understanding that these are opportunities, particularly within the skilled trades, it is not a very diverse pathway. And so really trying to have that early exposure for students in elementary and middle school. To the transportation point, we've located directly across from a regional transit stop. And although it is not the best, it is at least you know, a tangible way for students to navigate. And so what we've tried to do is also locate resource centers as a countywide benefit. Students could potentially be coming from Elk Grove, and so we have community partners where students could attend on Tuesday and Thursdays, the days where they're out with their industry partnerships, so they could go to these resource centers first before going on to the industry partnerships. I think Mr. Maury, you know, noted this, but the ACEs, those adverse childhood experiences that many students are bringing into the classroom, all students and adults just experienced a huge one, right, with this pandemic, and we're still in the midst of it. Regarding tools, I will just say that we've tried to address that through, again, our partnerships. There's a number of existing programs out there that will support students and those that have shown an interest to the trades. That's, for example, Harbor Freight Tools for Schools. I know we are partnered with the local Carpenters Union. Individuals that commit to that are outfitted with tools. And so we recognize that as a challenge as well. And the intent is that every student by the start of their junior year, depending on their pathway, are outfitted with their own tools. Another one that I'll just throw out there is the California Department of Education, the CTE pathways. I think they provide a very valuable framework to just engage in CTE learning. One of the challenges with that is it sometimes, because it is tied to funding, can disincentivize students' opportunity to explore different trades, kind of track students along a single track. And so again, well-intentioned, but I think sometimes, particularly for large comprehensive schools who are looking to have these CTE completers, it disincentivizes that exploration phase and maybe jumping to a higher interest area, which then translates into students maybe not going into that career after high school.
thanks, Kevin. And Roshni or Maury, I'll give you a chance if you also want to speak to the question about providing tools, which can be a barrier for individuals graduating from these programs or interested in this career. Do either of you have programs for that?
Currently, we do not provide tools for kids once they graduate. Obviously, during the program, we have them. They're even, in our media arts program, they get to take home computers and take home cameras. Construction, if we go out on projects, we provide it all, but we don't have something set up to leave them with it. Honestly, when you said that, Chris, I went, oh man, that's what we got to do now. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up.
Thank you.
So for us, we provide tools as needed as they're participating. But when I say as they're participating, the way our program is set up, that we have our weekly programs that happen on site, but then some of our students, for a reason or another, they may stop coming consistently during the week, but then we stay in connection with them because they're 18 or older, whatever the case is. So if we have opportunities, we can call them. And some of them will require like boots or gloves or things of that nature. And we have provided those resources as they've been available. So, yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. And then the last question I have for you, and then we can open it up if there are questions from the audience, is any experience you have collaborating with the community colleges, or any opportunities to increase communication and collaboration with the community colleges? And I know, Kevin, you mentioned some dual enrollment, so I'm going to start with you on that question.
Absolutely. So my current role here in Natomas Charter School, we've developed a dual enrollment pathway with American River College. We've also then now through Capital College Career Academies obtained letters of support and intent to enter into existing agreements once the petition's in hand with both ARC and Sacramento State. I think one of the questions here is there opportunities to increase community college? I think a couple opportunities that come to my mind right off the bat is for a formal dual enrollment partnership, you have to have a large number of students participating in that pathway. That means it makes sense. The college isn't going to offer a class for 2 kids. And so with that, particularly on some of the smaller schools, those CTE pathways become pretty challenging. And so we've tried to address that by students going advanced ed. This is students going to the college as a high school student on their own, sitting in the college class. But there is higher thresholds for students to get there. And then you also have the transportation piece, whereas dual enrollment can take place directly on the high school campus. So I think they are still things that we're trying to work through. We've also had discussions of maybe offering non-credit career exploration courses, just ways in which all students can participate, get some exposure, and have that experience of being a college student, maybe at a lower risk.
Thank you. Maury, I'll ask you the same question. Any experience collaborating with community colleges or opportunities to increase that collaboration?
Yeah, our experience really over the last 5 years, up until the point COVID hit, has been phenomenal with the local community colleges, with Los Rios specifically. We have had 8, 9, maybe even 10 different classes articulated with one of the 4 Los Rios community colleges. And we have had a large number of kids walk out of Saba with college credit under their belt because of that. Once COVID hit, obviously those articulations, the lab time kind of took a dive, and we've got to rebuild that now. So as far as opportunity, everybody was in a flux for 1.5 years, 2 years, still kind of are somewhat, but we've got to rebuild those partnerships, get those relationships back reestablished, and get those programs running. And it's not easy to get those articulations in place. There's a lot of logistics that we have to work through, and you're dealing with some big entities with school districts and community college districts. So there's a lot of bureaucracy you have to work through. You just need leaders on both ends that know the impact that these articulations make. I think one of the biggest challenges for the student population we serve is that matriculation process from high school to community college. So many of our kids who have done really well here at Saba Charter School, they get that diploma and they're excited, but they don't ever get enrolled. They don't ever get to that next step. If we can get them enrolled, get credits under their belt, and show them how they're actually ahead going in, some students, a lot of them show up to Saba behind academically. Our whole pitch to them is when you leave Saba, you can be ahead with these college credits and these CTE articulations. And if we get them in that system prior to graduating, they are so much more likely to continue their education in these community college pathways.
Thank you.
Can I add one point to that too? I think one of the things that's important for the K to 12, which Maury alluded to, is that research shows students have a successful experience. It's not about the amount of credits that they take, but the success and even a single class leads to more likelihood that they're going to actually complete college after high school. And I think that's something that's really important for us to really keep in mind as we're discussing these partnerships.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Absolutely. Roshni, any experience that Green Tech has with collaborating with the community colleges or opportunities to increase or adjust that?
Yes, absolutely. So we do have some experience collaborating with community college. We actually have a former Green Tech staff, you're gonna call her staff person, who is a admissions person, or excuse me, financial aids person at Sac City College. And so we have her come and speak to our students often about the financial aid process and financial admissions process. And we do very much push, well, I don't want to say push, but encourage our students to consider going to college, because our demographic, a lot of our students often would just want to go straight to work, especially when it comes to construction and things of that nature. And hence is our struggle, because we're always trying to stay with us for a period of time, keep that network going, continue to build your skills so that way we can connect you off into an actual career. And sometimes that consists of trade school, and often we encourage the value of getting the education. So saying not to say that there is still often the struggle that, as that's been formally mentioned, about the students continuing going. We have enrolled several, helped enroll several students in different, CRC, as well as Sac City, and then they don't continue for whatever reason. They get work and they don't find it, they don't need it, or they say they're going to go back later. First they want to work, things of that nature. And so, yeah, that's been our experience. And opportunities, and we could definitely increase opportunities for collaborations in colleges.
I appreciate you highlighting that, Roshni, because that's actually come up in other advisory panels as well, specifically when outreaching to underinvested populations, is once they get a job, even though that wasn't the job they were going for, they drop out and don't persevere because they need the money now. And so that is, as we're looking to increase the participation of traditionally underserved populations, that's, really a piece that needs to be figured out, maybe more earn and learn models or ways that they're receiving the income that they need earlier on in the process might be one type of solution. So I appreciate you highlighting that.
And then I think maybe too, something that we try to, implement is the, financial literacy, even though I know we're not here for that, but the financial literacy, but also the understanding true cost of living, if you will, especially in today's day and age. So if you have never had a job and you go and get $15 an hour, you think you're doing something until you realize you live in California and gas is $5 a gallon, and all the other things that come with it. And so I think that the earn as you learn, and also just emphasizing on all our behalves the investments. And I think investment versus cost of things, and realizing that there's other ways to invest, and investing in education pays out in the back end. Just throwing ideas out there, but yes, that's definitely a thing.
Thank you. Thanks very much. So I'm going to admit there's a lot of activity going on in the chat, which I'm excited about. It's a lot of networking. I want to make sure that I haven't missed any questions from anyone who might have a question to the panel. So if you do, I'll just ask you to raise your hand if you could. If anyone has a question to the panel, I want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. I'll just kind of scroll around here on my screen, make sure.
I see Chris with a hand up.
Oh, thanks so much, Chris.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah, thank you.
And this may be going beyond our panel too. When John started his program, one of the things that really made it successful is he had a partnership with Sunline Transit and had access to vehicles. And when we did our study about EV technician training in the Sacramento area, that was a giant hole, is that the community colleges here didn't have any vehicles to take apart or work on. And I see Susan Wheeler from SMUD, and thank heavens for SMUD, because SMUD arranged for some retired vehicles to get diverted into those programs. But I'm wondering from the rest of the instructors, is that a hole that you have, is having real vehicles to touch and work on?
So that sounds like a question to the panel or to any instructors on the call, potentially.
I won't say it's having vehicles, it's having current technology to work on, because a lot of them will have stuff that's retired that they're no longer using, and it's not something that's valid to teach on. And as Chris alluded to that, I still have a working relationship with Sunline Transit almost 18 years later, that I'm on their Center of Excellence for their training program. So it's developed a friendship that has lasted 18 or 19 years now.
You did get a thumbs up from Roy Ingram on that, Chris. I don't know if anyone wants to share.
For Green Tech, we don't have any active cars to work on, but we do have active, again, mentioned active vehicles to help people get around. And from my understanding, again, that, as I mentioned, that's kind of an evolving system. And from my understanding, like part of how that has evolved is that allowing it to be accessible to other community organizations that need help transporting community members here and there. And so, yes, you know, that's our answer.
Roy, did you have anything else you wanted to add? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. Just want to give you the opportunity.
Yeah, as far as our auto program here at Sierra College, it's been reduced quite a bit, but I think what he alluded there of having the current vehicles was a big issue with our program and keeping up with the technology changes. So in mechatronics, where we teach a lot of what Chris had alluded to early on in this conversation of the lexicon, the language around it for whatever part of the employment opportunities are out there. We do have all of that in our curriculum for mechatronics, because really it comes down to a car is a mechatronics device, sensors, motors, batteries, it's all there. So but currently we have no electric vehicles in our future that I can see.
Mm-hmm.
I see Louis has his hand up, but I'm going to talk on top of him anyway. John and I don't know how many years ago, we put together a grant to try to put together like a lending library of parts and vehicles and things to move around and share. We didn't win the grant, but even going through it, it just seemed, John, I don't know if you remember, this was so long ago, that how you kept track of stuff and shipped these heavy things from place to place was, a barrier to being able to do that.
Yeah, and even now, I've got probably 50, 60 Prius battery cells that I'm more than happy to donate to any program that wants them. So I have drive motors, transaxles, generators that I'm just reaching out to any of the schools that have them, that don't have it, that would like it. If they'll pay for shipping or bring a pickup truck down, they're more than welcome to have this stuff. And yes, Chris, I do remember that. It was actually in Miami, and it was raining, and it was a tropical storm coming in when we met in the taxi.
Thank you so much. So there's a lot of information in the chat related to this. We'll let Louis talk now. Louis, what is your question, or what do you want to share?
So first and foremost, a shameless promotion. Sierra College, we have these construction fundamental boot camps. We're running one right now. It's a free, tuition-free, no textbook. You just got to show up Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. There's an OSHA 10 card. There's introductions to various residential trades. Then in October, we start a second one that is geared more towards, utilizes the MC3 curriculum and is geared more towards commercial application. And up to that specific partnership is trying to put students on the Richards project, the DGS project downtown. So a little bit about me, I know a few of you on here, but I used to teach the pre-apprenticeship program at American River College, which was getting college students into apprenticeships. So what we did is somewhat like a buffet. We would do a little bit of plumbing, carpentry, electrical, HVAC, labor, and then we would put, if the student said, I really like doing this, Then we'd put them in contact with that apprenticeship. American River College no longer does that program, and someone, I think Kevin put it in there, that they're focusing on their formalized apprenticeships. That is true, but we had a partnership with all of them to kind of tour their facilities, to go through and have them come do hands-on experiences or experiments with the students. Climbing poles, we had partnerships with PG&E, the Power Pathways program. We had also with PG&E and SMUD, I see Susan Wheeler, she was also on that board, and SMUD helped out a lot with solar panel education, things like that. Currently, I'm at Sierra College, and I'm in the building industries, but I'm an electrician by trade. I have tried to go through the EVIT training, but unfortunately they don't answer their emails very often. So, and I hear that that is a very common thing. So actually, when we were talking, someone put the link in, I reapplied again. My focus in what I've been doing for the last 10 years with these pre-apprenticeship programs is exposure. I think that it's better for the contractors, it's better for the students when they know and have a desire in what they're doing. I know a lot of times we want to have a certain, especially at the community college, we want to have a certain number of graduates and certificates and things like that. But I think we're doing a disservice if we don't at least spark an interest in our students. And that's a teacher answer, by the way. That's not a practical electrician answer. So how do we do that? And I think a lot of that to reinvest is Jesus is currently running, Jesus de la Torre is in this meeting as well. He's currently running an I3, which is a MIT kind of rethinking of education. And they are going to experiment with a lot of the stuff. And Roy, I was thinking, rather than bringing a whole electric vehicle to disassemble, you could start kind of small. I think you brought a cart, right? An electric cart that has pretty much the same technology. Now, I've met with Lion Bus as well, and they were looking to develop curriculum for their trainees and their people. The only problem is there is a lot of danger is current in an electric vehicle. Now, it's not just about turning a wrench. That part is very important as well. But if you're not taking the proper safety precautions and understanding the electrical danger, you don't come back from an electric shock. A, you won't gain superpowers. I've been shocked. I have not gained one single superpower yet. B, you can do some lifelong damage to yourself if you do not understand what you are dealing with. So yes, Roy and I have had this conversation in the past, is trying to bring the electrical and the mechanical skills in automotive together to maybe develop that curriculum. Charging stations are also going to be another need that we can also look to develop. That's it. I'm off my soapbox.
Thank you for sharing what Sierra College is doing. Appreciate it. It looks like Esperanza has a question. Esperanza, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, so basically, good morning. My name is Esperanza Vielma, and I'm the Executive Director for the Environmental Justice Coalition for Water. And we participate in a lot of things in terms of here with the community working on various programs. And we actually just have received a donation from Valley Clean Air Now. We have 3 electric vehicle e-Golf Volkswagen that we're utilizing for transportation. Right now we're doing Get Out the Vaccine, and then there's other programs we're in development with, working in conjunction also with the LEAP Institute in Huron. But nonetheless, we have this Ag Tech Summit that we put on. It's the 2nd annual one. And so basically the director there is looking to bring in like the ag equipment, and then we're having the air district speak about the incentive programs. But, you know, after, you know, hearing all of the panelists and all their information that they had, I thought that it would be good in terms of being able to, you know, connect them with, you know, folks that, you know, may have programs already in place and that we can help to replicate over here on this end of the valley. So that's one of the things that was a question basically in terms of the ag equipment part of it, because I know that there's incentive programs for it for the farmer on the farmer side, but I'm looking for our community members, our students. You know, we serve the environmental justice communities, environmental disadvantaged communities. And so we're trying to integrate them into these green jobs, both with the electric vehicle and then with the ag equipment as well. Thank you.
Esperanza, it's Chris White. I just dropped you a private chat and a public chat too. I can help you with that. The Energy Commission, I support the Energy Commission's EPIC program, which is the electric program investment something. And EPIC just did a whole thing about ag tech. And so I got a lot of folks that are both big players and startups. So I also dropped into the chat publicly the link to the forum that we just put on, so you can see some of the presentations, and some of it's equipment like tractors, and other is awesome things like worms that eat cow poo. So
yes.
Did you know that worms lay babies in cocoons? Who knew that? So
if there's ever a, you know, like an
Thank
epic
you.
game of trivia where there's like money on the line or like my life, I want you to be my partner, Chris. That's all I'm saying. I want you to be my partner. You have such great information. So as we're getting close to wrapping up, I want to make sure that we drop in the link and share information about the next advisory in this series, which is going to happen on September 17th. And that's where we're going to have an employer and industry panel. I think it's really important to round out the conversation to ensure that we're hearing from employers and industry. The reason we didn't do it all in one advisory was that we thought this would be a very robust topic and we didn't want to keep people on Zoom for 4 hours. So we want to encourage you to join that. You'll receive the link as well in your email when we send the post-event materials. But we hope you'll join us on September 17th for that second part of the advisory. And then I just want to thank everyone for joining today. It's a great advisory when we're both presenting information, but there's a lot of networking and sharing from everyone on the call. And we saw a lot of that happening in the chat as well as through question and answer. It really is going to take all of us to move the needle on this. Really appreciate the expertise from Chris as well as Professor Frala. And we hope that you've made some valuable connections here that you can build off of. I will ask Jeff or Orion, I don't know if they have any parting comments for you from the community college system, but I want to thank everyone for spending time on this call today. And I'll just ask Jeff or Orion if you have anything you want to say.
This is Orion. I really appreciate everybody's time, and there's a lot of great information and discussion today. I learned a lot myself. Great to see a few familiar faces out there in virtual land, and keep up all the great work that you're doing. And please let me know if I can be helpful in making connections between community college programs and employers in the Sacramento region and further north. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Orion. And thank you again also to our panel. Thank you to Kevin, Rashini, and Maury for joining us and letting us know what is happening, especially on pipeline programs and education and non-traditional programs. Again, thank you so much. I think we're going to give you a couple of minutes back of your day, which is unusual, but let's take that gift and we can all shake it off before our next meeting. So thanks again, and you'll be receiving the post-event material shortly.
Thank you.
Thank
Renee, I
you
have a
all.
quick question.
Thank you, everyone.
Yes.
Renee, I have a quick question.
Yes.
I know that there's a way to save chats and like download them. Can you do that on your end and send me a copy, because my computer doesn't support it for whatever reason, so I'm unable to do so.
Yes, we will.
Just
We have
saved
the
it.
chat.
We just saved it. We'll send it over. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin.
You can just go into the chat and Control A and Control C, put it into a Word document.
Okay.
Well, there's that too. Yes, I see that.
Okay.
Okay, great. Well, anyways, thank you guys. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks so much. Thank you, everyone.
Nice job.
Thank you, Jeff. Thanks.